Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Somatic Hound podcast. Today I have William. I forgot to ask you how to say your last name. Is it Garrido?
Garrido, yes.
And William, I met on Instagram. That's how I find most of my podcast guests, honestly. Oh, yeah. Also, your podcast. And both of those are dog training is my passion.
Correct.
I've been following you for a while and just felt like, we had some similar views. Obviously, nobody's going to agree 100% on everything, but we had enough in common that I felt like could bring you on the podcast and have a little chat. So, do you want to give your background for people who might not know you?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I've also been following you for some time. My background, a little bit, just in a nutshell, I've been working dogs for the past 16 years, and the bulk of my experience is with working dogs. So I started training police dogs, then I did some contract working dog in Afghanistan. Then I also did a lot of pet dog training. I did a continued education on various areas of dog training from a working dog aspect to operant conditioning, learning theory. And I currently work with pet clients. I have a dog training business and I have a protection club run through PSA. So it's Protection Sports Association. So I'm very active in that as well. And that's pretty much it. And like you said, just like you, I have a podcast, I have a Instagram channel, YouTube, and here I am.
Cool. Yeah, I think one of the podcast episodes that you did where I really clicked with your point of view was you were telling people to walk with a walking stick in order to protect from off leash,
Yeah.
loose, or stray dogs. And I was also telling people that, but like getting a rash of SHIT for it. And it's like, well, what else are we supposed to do? These dogs are accosting us. And at the time, the real problem was I had adopted a dog who was extremely dog aggressive, and I was afraid that she was gonna F up one of these loose dogs that could be just
Mhm.
some neighbor's pet dog. So I actually started carrying a stick to protect the friendly dogs from my dog.
hmm
But it's a great idea.
Honestly, I can see why you were getting pushback on that. A lot of people just latch onto the worst aspect of your message, and they don't see that 90% of your message was good. They latch on the 10% of what does that mean? You're going to hit another dog? But the aspect of your message and my message on that topic is we're actually preventing the worst case scenario. I'd rather hit a dog with a stick than it be punctured or
Right.
it puncturing my dog or puncturing me in the process. So when you compare the possibilities, very likely you're not even going to have to hit the dog. But even if you do have to hit the dog, even if that's the worst case scenario, I'll take, if it was me and you told me, hey, you want to get stabbed or you want to get hit with a stick? I'll be like, please just hit me with a stick. And so that's where a lot of times your audience, or, just maybe not your audience, just people in general will do that, and I've been on social media for a long time. I've been posting videos for a long time. I've had my share of, oh, you shouldn't be saying that. I've had my share of people trying to cancel me for something like that. And so it's just kind of human nature. But I 100% agree with you. Obviously, this is why we resonate on a lot of the topics that we put out there is because, like you said earlier, yeah, we might not agree on 100%, and nobody really does, but we have enough things in common, like this topic, that we can go, this makes sense to you and it makes sense to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So the topic that we want to talk about today is actually something you touched on in one of your videos. I think you made a reel about it, about commercial doggy daycares, which
Yes.
can be a very touchy subject. And I know some daycare owners who do a good job with their daycares, but I also know a lot of daycares where dogs have gotten really badly injured from being in fights or sadly killed or even honestly just bullied. And now the dog is reactive or scared or insecure. Like I have a lot of clients come to me with dog reactive dogs. And the backstory is always, oh, she was fine until she got attacked at the daycare, the dog park. And I'm like, oh, that's too bad because this dog was like fine genetically, did not have any predisposition towards dog aggression, but got really badly attacked.
The common story, what you just said, that's exactly what I hear also. I've had clients where the story was the same. It was somewhere along the lines of he used to be great, but this one time he just started not liking dogs. And when you dig a little bit, and a lot of times they're pretty forward about it, they'll tell you, well, it's because one time we went to the daycare. And like I also know people that run it professionally, that run it, maybe not professionally is not the word, but run it responsibly. I think that's a better word. And the people that run it responsibly, that I know run it responsibly, are dog trainers. That's been my experience. There are people that they understand the the micro expressions. They can see it, like I said in that video, in that reel, they can see it. They can see a fight brewing way before it happens. Because, as dog trainers, we know, I know you probably want to do everything in your power to prevent a fight. So because you don't want to be getting in the middle of a fight, you're going to be much more proactive and you're going to be scanning for these little micro expressions. And you're going to have like this little plan in your head, where you're like, I'd rather err on the side of caution by stepping in and interrupting than just, play referee and just wait and start spraying or whatever it is that people do. So that's been my experience. I've done play groups. I also know people that do it responsibly. Some of my older videos on YouTube, from like over 10 years ago, I have a couple of clips where in my living room, I have like six dogs just walking around, in my living room, and intact dogs, dogs with some previous reactivity, and everybody's calm because I'm just scanning, I'm looking at the micro expressions, I'm interrupting, I'm redirecting their attention because, a lot of times, like you said, it's just one experience. The dog gets bullied. Uh, Even if the dog doesn't get bullied, even if the dog does the bullying, now that also becomes an experience to that dog. So
Yeah, exactly. I used to do a little bit of daycare at my home. I don't have like a kennel facility, but I have a fenced yard and I would turn my garage into like a little kennel area so they could come in and out of the heat or the cold or the rain or whatever. But I kind of burned my dogs out, I think, a little bit of having to constantly interact with strange dogs. And they were getting really stressed out. I don't think it's actually natural to dogs as they get older to constantly be exposed to and expected to always get along with different dogs, with dogs they don't know who are not part of their group or, their in group. I think it's really good if you can get a little group of dogs together that do get along and then they stay together for some months or years and that's their known group. And I know some dog daycares that do that. They take like a really small number of dogs and so they're not constantly rotating in like, I mean, some of these places take hundreds of dogs a day.
it's a business model. The more people you get to sign up into your daycare, the more profitable the business becomes. But, Leah, you said something really interesting, which I really liked. You indicated that you recognize that your dogs were getting fatigued by this constant exposure to other dogs. And that's just a testament to your ability to read your dogs and your relationship with your dogs. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of dog trainers don't do that. So you had enough sense and care for your dogs and such a good relationship with your dogs that you advocated for your dogs way before you saw a fight, you know? So when I hear that, I think that's amazing. It's something that I always admire about dog owners that do that, trainers also, because a lot of dog owners don't do that. A lot of dog trainers don't do that. They just kind of keep pushing their dogs. But it's a dog owner and a trainer that goes, you know what? Even though I'm not seeing the worst case scenario, I can see where this is going, and because I care about my dogs, I'm gonna make a different decision. So it's great when you said that, I was like, that's amazing. Obviously, I can tell Leah is an awesome dog trainer, awesome dog owner. You really care about your dogs because that shows that you do care. You're not just saying that you care; you actually do. So great job on that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think more people would step in or advocate for their dogs if they could see the signs of the stress and the sort of like social fatigue of the dog not really wanting to play as much as they used to, or kind of going into avoidance or being more defensive when they play, or disengaging more often when they play, trying to find places to hide and get away from the other dogs. So maybe we should talk about some of the body language or some of the signs that like maybe this dog isn't a social butterfly and doesn't really need to be in a daycare setting.
No, definitely. To me, I know there's this stigma of, which I understand, of not comparing dog behavior to human behavior because, we're different species, we behave different, or or the way we rationalize and process information is very different. So I understand the the problem with comparing, human behavior to dog behavior. I'm on board with that. But there are times where you see a lot of parallels, and there are times where I think the parallels are undeniable. And to me, one good analogy or parallel that I can make to human behavior in this particular topic is, I like people as much as the next guy. You could say I'm a social person, but if I was forced into a social setting for the sake of, Will, you just need to be social, and I was pushed into a social setting where I get to be with people that are very extroverted, over a period of time, I'd probably get a little bit tired of it. And so you will probably see some avoidance behaviors in me also, and just being humans, you'd be able to tell, my body language would indicate I'm kind of aiming towards the door. My foot's aiming towards the door. My shoulder is kind of turned away. Somebody talks to me, I would try to, end the conversation quickly and just act like I'm busy, checking my watch, checking my phone. And so if I make that parallel to dog behavior, I can compare that and I can go, well, a dog doesn't have a phone, right, or a watch, but what are they going to do? They're going to start sniffing the ground. They're going to they're going to aim their body towards a different location, right? So there are some parallels there that I believe are worthy of note, which is that right there. Yes, we can't compare human behavior to dog behavior, but we can draw some parallels there and go, this dog is showing avoidance. I don't even need to be a dog training expert. I don't need to be a body language expert. I just look at what I would do, and then I look at some of the things that my dog might be doing. And then I could draw the conclusion that my dog probably doesn't want to spend all this time with these very playful, happy, extroverted dogs. So I think if we do that, then we're in a better position to go, you know what? I think maybe my dog probably just needs a break from that.
Yeah, and I've known people who have had dogs that like went to daycare until they were probably about, I don't know what the average age is, but in a couple of cases, the dog turned like 7 or 8 years old and then all of a sudden just did not do well at daycare anymore. They just reached that age where they were like not interested in playing with the other dogs. Became very stressful for them and they just kind of like aged out. They were like, I'm over it. I don't need this anymore. So I guess what I want to talk about is why do people bring their dogs to dog parks and daycares? Is it because they are afraid if they don't socialize the dog that it will become aggressive?
I think in my experience, and we all have our different perspectives. I'm sure you have yours, and I have a feeling that your perspective and mine are probably very similar. So, from my perspective, there are a couple of things. One of it is obviously misinformation, you know, and the problem with misinformation is not that you don't know. I believe the problem with misinformation is that you don't know enough. So, for instance, if you want to bake something, like a cake, right? And I only give you a portion of the recipe, and you're left to figure out the rest. It's not going to be good. And so part of the misinformation with dog parks and doggy daycares is that half information that is sprinkled on the internet, which is you need to socialize your dog. But the thing is, what most people don't know is that's like a fraction of the recipe. As you know, there's more complexities to socializing your dog. But what people don't know is they just see that piece of information that they're told from their veterinarians, from their cousins, the internet, the YouTube videos where they go, oh, I should socialize my dog. And so to the layman, to the average person, because they don't understand the whole recipe. They go, I need to socialize my dog. And this is why they'll sign up for these things. They'll sign up for daycare, for dog parks. I have clients that have told me that. They're like, oh yeah, I mean, I should take my dog to the daycare so he can socialize, right? And then I'm like, well, hold on. Let me give you the entire recipe first. And then usually they'll go, oh yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And so it's not that that it's the people don't know. I think it's they know enough to get in trouble. And so that's one of the reasons. Another reason that I've noticed from talking to a lot of clients over the years is, they feel bad. They want their dogs to do something, and they just don't know. They don't know what that is. So they'll go, my dog needs to have doggy friends, right? Or my dog needs to do something because yes, I mean, if your dog doesn't really do a whole lot, you live in a pretty urban environment, your schedule is pretty hectic, pretty busy, and you have this dog that is really not doing anything, it's just staying in the house. I understand the desire to have your dog do something. And so I would say that's probably why. It's all great intentions. As you know, nobody goes, I want to ruin my dog. But I think that's probably what it is. It's misinformation. They just know enough to get them in trouble, and they feel bad and they want to do something, right? I would say from my perspective, that's probably why. I don't know if you have a different, an additional reason that you have heard over the years, but that's just what's prevalent to me in my mind.
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of it is projecting our own sort of unmet needs on the dog, and somebody goes to work all day and they feel guilty about leaving the dog alone. And they think, oh, my dog must be lonely. My dog needs friends. My dog needs activities, and I'm not able to provide them. So I will take my dog somewhere where they will be provided with enrichment and stimulation and socialization, which again, like I do know some daycares and some places, or even like somebody, I don't like to necessarily promote Rover, but there are people on Rover who run really small in-home daycares. If you can vet that person really well and they only take a few dogs at a time and you know that dog group is really safe, like that could be a place that's okay to take your dog. So there is a need if you are at work 8, 10, sometimes nurses, doctors, or other professions are away from the house 12 or more hours at a time. So sometimes there is a real need for somebody else to care for your dog. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's all coming from a good intention of people thinking that they're fulfilling the dog's needs. It's just unfortunately sometimes one bad incident will then shape that dog's reality, and it's difficult to undo that. It takes a long time to undo that. So, what are some alternatives?
When I have clients that have that concern, I do give them some different options that they can take. For instance, one thing that some people have access to is they have friends who have dogs and they know their dogs, and their friends have a similar concern to them. So one alternative that is much safer, that I've told clients is, you have two friends or, plus a neighbor or two neighbors, you know their dogs know you, they know your dog. A safer alternative would be for you guys to get together, once a week, and, just, have lunch. And while you're doing that, just have the dogs interact, but everybody's watching. And at least it's just safer. At least if I have my friend with his dog, I know he knows his dog. Maybe not as good as, as I know my dog, but I know if John is hanging out with me and his dog is hanging out with my dog, if I see my dog needs a little bit of a break and maybe John doesn't see it, I can advocate for my dog because I'm there and I can go, hey, John, just, pull your dog away real quick. I think my dog needs a little bit of a break, right? And so it's just a safer alternative if the dogs are safe, of course. If the dogs are friendly, yes, you still have that possibility of, of things getting a little bit out of control. That's completely understandable. But at least we all know each other. I know his dog, I know their dog, and we can also even go, you know what, your dog is a little bit too intense. Let's just kind of keep Fluffy over here just a little bit more reined in than the other ones, right? But I think that's one safer alternative if you know people and you know their dogs and their dogs are safe. If not, definitely don't do that. Another thing that I'll tell my clients is, dog walking. Just we are just talking about Rover. Yes, one way to give a dog sort of a break from the day to day, they wake up in the house and they don't really do a whole lot, is to hire a dog walker. And like you said, vet the dog walker, make sure that this is a safe thing. I'll just basically let the client know, if you're unable to, have a neighbor, have somebody or hire somebody to just walk your dog a couple of times. However many times you can afford it, however many times would be practical for your schedule. And so I think that's another alternative. Another alternative to me is, some sort of exercise. Some sort of regimen, some sort of exercise. It could be, you and your dog go on a hike, you and your dog go for a walk. Another one that I particularly like is a mechanical treadmill. To me, the benefits that your dog and you as a person, it's just anything with muscles and bones and joints, right? The more you move and run and sprint, the more benefits your whole body gets. I mean, it's even an antidepressant. And this has actually been also observed in animals. I made a video on this, but there are studies that, measure the benefits of exercise on animals. Like preventing neuron depletion and just a bunch of other factors. So I would say investment in a piece of equipment that can be stowed somewhere in in your house, even if you only have for like 5, 10 minutes, you can put your dog on that thing for 5, 10 minutes while you're catching up on your emails or while you're catching up on your texts. And then, then at least your dog is getting a nice bit of exercise. So to me, these are all safe alternatives to bringing your dog to a place where you literally have no control of what happens there.
Yeah, that's great. I think all of those ideas are really smart. And I do want people to understand that, like, we do believe dogs need to get outside, get exercise. Like, you can't just let them sit on the couch all day and then not do anything with them. Like, you come home from work, you're tired. So, the treadmill is a great idea. And
I
then
mean,
I also teach people canine resistance training. So, even if you take your dog on a short walk, they're dragging weight and they're getting
yes.
a really intense workout.
I'm telling you that, and that's one thing that I forgot to mention too, but that is such a wonderful idea. If you could just do like if your schedule just allows for like a quick 10-minute walk, a 10-minute walk with some resistance, like with now they have all sorts of gadgets for that. They have there are weighted vests, there are weighted collars. You probably have heard about that. And like you said, some the dog dragging something. That 10-minute walk with some sort of resistance component to it, it makes that 10-minute walk a lot more efficient than just a regular 10-minute walk. So absolutely. You're 100.
Yeah, so I don't want to overwhelm people and make them think like, oh, you have to run your dog for 5 miles a day to tire them out instead of going to daycare. Because part of it is that everybody's really busy. People are burnt out with their jobs. Maybe they have kids. I mean, their lives are full. Like they don't have time to take this dog for a 10-mile hike every day or whatever. Like if you have a really high energy dog, and maybe part of it is people are getting breeds that they don't realize the need of that dog is actually very high for enrichment, engagement, training, exercise. And it's almost like if I wasn't a dog trainer, I'm like, how would I be taking care of my dogs right now? Because like they need a lot. They are kind of meaty.
I mean, having a dog is it's like having a part-time job. I made a video where I said if you're thinking about getting a dog, don't. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
I'll have to send it to you, but I basically list all the reasons as to why you shouldn't get a dog if you're on the fence about getting a dog. And so it's just I think it's just culturally we're just conditioned to believe that part of growing up is you need to have a house with a white picket fence and a dog, you know? And the reality is yes, I mean I love my dogs and they definitely add to my life and I see the benefits of having a dog. There are already studies that show that people that have pets, they live longer, they're healthier. So it's a benefit that I would certainly want everybody to have. But as you know, and as I know, there are people that they just don't have the space. And I'm not just talking about the physical space, that they don't have the mental space, the schedule to add a dog into their lives. So I feel like, as much as of a dog person that I am, I feel pretty confident in saying that, and this would probably be one of these things that I'd mentioned earlier, 90% of what I'm saying is probably applicable and good, but there's going to be people who are going to latch on the 10% of what I'm saying and go, that's terrible. But, I'll say that not everybody should have a dog. It's just not everybody should have a dog. I've seen some of my clients that I've worked with, and some people that I've known, their lives deteriorated the moment they got a dog. Like now they're busier. They don't realize that the financial strain that this animal is putting on their lives, it seems irrelevant. I just have a dog, but it's more than that. And you don't just have a dog, you have a part-time job now. You have now to revolve your schedule around this thing that depends on you. And people just don't think about those things. They just think about the quick dopamine rush of, I want to get a dog. I've always wanted a dog. And then they realize, oh my God, this is a lot of work and a big financial investment. So
Yeah, I just did a double TPLO surgery on my little female dog because she tore both of her CCLs and it's really expensive. And I had to think, like, I mean, to be honest, I was like, should I put this dog down? This is $10,000.
I'm telling you, I've been,
And is she gonna be okay after? Like, what if we put the $10,000 and then she's like still limping around and has no quality of life? So these are, I mean, they're really heavy issues. I'm glad I did it. She's doing great. She's just about to turn 5 years old. If she was 8 or 10 years old, I probably would have to have, you know,
yeah.
considered the other option, which is terrible to say, but you do have to think about quality of life issues when they go through a major surgery like that. So it is, I'm glad actually the conversation went in this direction because it is just a humongous responsibility. And these dogs do become like family members. And
Yeah.
so you kind of can't not take care of them the way they really need, or else it weighs on you, you know?
And the other thing too is, the other thing that I know is yes, I mean, if somebody were to go, I don't care, it's just I got the time, I don't mind the money, I'll do that. I want a dog. The other thing that people don't realize is losing a dog because it's inevitable. They don't live as long as you do. Right? It is inevitable. You're gonna lose a dog, right? The dog is gonna pass. Hopefully, they live a nice, happy, long life. But when you lose a pet, it is it is difficult. It's hard, And in my experience, and I'll say this. I don't have a problem saying this. I've lost my grandparents. Some of my grandparents have already passed away. And yeah, I was like, oh man, that's too bad. I wish I had seen them again. But losing a pet is harder than losing, my aunt. I have one of my aunts passed away a few years ago to COVID. She was a really nice lady. I have so many memories, when I was little growing up, going to her house. I loved her. I absolutely loved her. But when one of my dogs passed, that was harder. When one of my cats had to be put down, that was way harder. So you're not just signing up for the burden of having a part-time job and the financial struggle or the financial restraint rather, but the impending loss that you're going to have to get over. It's very difficult. So these are all reasons, and this is kind of a weird topic for a dog training podcast, to basically almost like discourage people if they're thinking about it. But I think it's just a conversation that's just not had enough. Most people don't talk about that. There aren't that many conversations around that topic, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, this is I might have to do a whole podcast just on the whole concept of, look, you're caring for this animal that, I mean, I don't have kids, so I do kind of treat my dogs like kids, like they sleep with me, which I don't recommend. But I mean, they're my constant companions, but it's really a being that's dependent on you
A
constantly.
100%.
And then
A
the
hundred-
weird thing is, it's like watching your child age and die in front of your eyes. It's
It's hard.
very, oh, it's
It is hard.
gut-wrenching.
The pets that I've lost, I still remember them, and I'm like, oh man, if I think about, 'cause especially when you had them when they were young, I've had dogs that I've lost when they were young, so you watch them from when they were like 8 weeks of age, and then suddenly they're just gone. And then I've also had dogs that I've adopted at 3. They lived until 15, and then they're gone. But it's hard because you watch them grow, so it's difficult. It's a difficult thing, and it hits people very hard.
It's really hard to describe what it is. But I think this is actually, to bring it full circle, I think this is why people take their dogs to a park or a daycare is because they are looking at it like, oh, this is, I don't want to say it's like a child because it's not, but it's like a family member. It's a family member, and you want to
Yeah.
do everything you can to make their life full, especially because they do have short lives. You want to make that life as full as possible. So it's totally understandable why people are trying to enrich their dogs' lives by having them go to these social situations where they have lots of friends. But um, I think, did you just get a new puppy?
Yes and no. So it's sort of an evaluation process where I'm either going to keep him or I might sell him. So for all intents and purposes, he's my puppy, for the time being. I'm taking care of
Okay.
him, feeding him, I'm training him. He lives with me. But I'm still not sure where this is going to go once he reaches about a year of age or so.
Okay. The only reason I asked, so he might be more of like a raise and train kind of situation.
With this particular dog, yes.
What are you doing for, how old is the dog and what are you doing for him to like quote unquote socialize the puppy?
So he's 4 months of age. Well, almost 4 months of age. He's still in the puppy stage, still within that 20-week window. So what I'm doing with him is obviously he's getting training. He's doing his little bite work with me, which he loves to do. He was bred for that. As far as socializing goes, he does get to sniff and hang out a little bit for brief periods with my social dogs, which I have 4 other Malinois. 3 of them are social. The one he's social enough. He's not a troublemaker, but you could tell he's waiting for an excuse. Yeah. And so I don't put him and the puppy in that situation. The puppy already knows. He's like, I don't want to mess with that guy. But with the other ones, he does sniff, but I control what he does. So the sniffing is good. The, rubbing is, against each other is fine. When he starts like acting like he wants to hump the other dog, I'm like, no, we're not doing that. When he starts, getting a little bit snappy, starts acts like he wants to put his teeth on him playfully, I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So I'm being already very proactive at telling him what things are and are not acceptable. But that would be the limited exposure. And it's not the thing that to me is the most important, by the way. Like to me, it's not like this dog needs to see my other dogs. I would be perfectly fine if he didn't. It just so happens that I have the other dogs. And so he is automatically exposed to them. But if I didn't, I wouldn't make it a big deal I need to go find other dogs for him to socialize to. He already gets plenty of enrichment with training, hanging out with me, which he loves, right? I literally can hold him. He can be on my lap and he's just licking my face, hanging out with me the entire time. That's plenty of enrichment for him. Not every dog will love that, but he particularly loves that. And then, doing the bite work, going for the walks, carrying things in his mouth, which he loves to do. So to me, I look at the overall routine, and I can see what things make him excited. And I go, I don't need to, socialize him with my other dogs. It just happens, but I don't need to do that because he enjoys the other stuff.
Yeah, that's great. As I've developed as a dog trainer, I realize the most important thing for me is for my dogs to have a really close relationship with me, not with other dogs. I want to be the most important thing in their life. So it's not that I stop my dogs from having relationships with other dogs, but I don't place an emphasis on, oh, we need to find friends for you because you won't be fulfilled if you don't have doggy friends. It's like, honestly, now that my dogs are 5 and 6, they kind of prefer to be just with me. They're not seeking out social interactions with other dogs. They love training. They love hiking in the woods. Um, I just think we kind of project too much human psychology, thinking they need friends, you know?
Yes. No, I tend to agree with that. You know, you do see, and like I said earlier, you know, I'm totally against comparing human to dogs. I see the damage that that can do, but I also see that there is value in drawing some parallels. This would be an instance in which that wouldn't be, you know, appropriate, right? To go, well, I would like to hang out with, I would like to socialize, so my dog needs to socialize. And the fact is, the dog doesn't need to. Another thing too, another misinformation that people have is they're under the, and I used to believe it too. They're under the impression that dogs, you hear this, dogs are pack animals, and the reality is they're not necessarily pack animals. They can do very well in a, traditional pack, but they're so adaptable that they can do amazing as lone, by themselves animals. Like for instance, yeah, wolves are pack animals. They're happier when they have this group structure, this group dynamic. Fox are not, pack animals. They're in the same, in the same category of animal. They're both canids, but a fox, you're not going to see a pack of fox. You're going to see one here and there living by themselves, maybe with, with a female with their offspring. But the wolves, you're going to see them in a pack. And so we, as a society, have categorized dogs into the pack category. And we go, well, they're pack animals, so they need to have a pack. They need to socialize. And the reality is they don't need to. That's the wonderful thing about dogs is they're so adaptable that you can see them thriving in what we would call a pack. We could also see them thriving by themselves. You know, when I was in Afghanistan, you would see a single dog. There'd be like nothing, literally nothing for miles, nothing. And there'd be one dog just thriving by himself, just walking around. So, and I've also been in other parts of the world where you see like a pack of dogs. So, because they're so adaptable, they don't need to be, saying hi to all these dogs like we traditionally think they are.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I had the opportunity to visit the Dominican Republic and kind of observe the dogs there who just live on the street. They live on the beach, the most chill, relaxed, happy dogs you've ever seen because they're free. Now, they don't seem to pack up.
Hmm.
One dog came over and sat under our beach chairs. Another dog would go over to where they were serving food and he was like asking people for food, but they weren't in a group like hunting things, because the way that those dogs survive is by making relationships with people, not with other dogs. So I think, I mean, we could go on for hours about this, but I think it's good to just observe like how do dogs live when they are not in a house, when they are a street dog or a beach dog and they're free to do what they want. Are they necessarily packing up? Not really.
No, not
So,
at all. It's because we're both equally adaptable. You know, it's an interesting thing is you can only see wolves in, certain parts of the world. You're not going to see a wolf randomly, in Austin just walking around because wolves are not adaptable. you're not gonna just see a random fox in an area where they wouldn't be naturally, you wouldn't naturally see fox. Dogs, you can see in every corner of the world. You can see them in just about every type of environment because they're that adaptable. Humans are the same. You don't just see human sightings in certain climates or certain parts of the world. You see humans in every corner of the world. So we're both so incredibly adaptable. This is why we together as two different species have maybe not evolved, but have matured, in this nice symbiotic relationship that we've had is because we're both equally adaptable. But yeah, again, it's a pretty deep topic, and yeah, that's why dogs, like you said, they don't need to have dog friends.
Yeah, and there certainly are dogs who will thrive being really social. I think it's a really small percentage of dogs, like a much smaller percentage than we think. And some of that depends on breed, some of it's just personality or temperament. So if you do have a dog that loves other dogs and you can socialize them with other dogs who are safe, that you know the other dog's owner and how they care for the dog, and if they actually know their dog's kind of thresholds and how to read their dog's body language, then I'm all for like, yes, set up a play date with another dog who is safe, just exactly like what you were saying. If you have some friends, you know the dogs are pro-social, your dog actually does get a lot of enrichment and fulfillment from that interaction, that's great. I'm trying to hit every angle so that we don't make anybody upset. I think to wrap things up, do you have any closing thoughts on the whole daycare dog park situation?
Probably, I would say don't latch onto the idea that it needs to be done because it doesn't need to be done. And no socialization is way better than poor socialization. That
Yeah,
would be my closing thoughts on that.
that's the key right there. We want to prevent the dog from having bad experiences,
Absolutely.
especially at the younger age where they're more impressionable. So I think protecting puppies is like
Yes.
really important.
Yeah, that the first 20 weeks of their lives are so crucial to their entire development.
Yeah. And some dogs are like one, what do you call it? Like a one incident learner where like
Yeah.
one bad thing.
Single event learner, yeah.
Yeah, single event.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean that's for some dogs that are that sensitive where yeah, they'll just get that one experience and they're like, "Oh, so that's how the world works." And we're like, "No,
Yeah.
it's not. That's just an exception." And they're like, "Nope, that's how the world works."
Yeah,
And then after that, that's how that's what they turn that into code for their behavioral software. And then now
exactly.
permanent. So
Okay, cool. Well, where can people find you?
well, if they just go to Dog Training is My Passion, super simple. Altogether, Dog Training is My Passion on YouTube. If you go to dogtrainingismypassion.com, it will also bring you to a list of some of the books I've written. It'll also have a link to my YouTube channel. So yeah, Dog Training is My Passion on Instagram, Facebook if you're on Facebook, TikTok. I post some stuff there also. But podcast platforms or YouTube, it's all the same handle. Dog training is my passion.
Thank you so much. It was great to finally meet you on Zoom. And yeah, I hope
Likewise,
we get to meet in real life sometime and maybe
definitely.
do some training together. So thanks for being here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.